Welcome to the TLGS 2024 conference. My name is Wendy Doucette from East Tennessee State University. I'll be moderating today's session. I'll also be collecting questions in the chat. I'm going to turn this over to our presenter who will discuss teaching a credit-bearing library course for graduate students from proposal to postmortem.
Hi, yes, thank you, Wendy. I am Jill Cirasella. I am the Scholarly Communication Librarian at the CUNY Graduate Center, and my presentation today is teaching a credit-bearing library course for graduate students from proposal to postmortem. And my slides, like everybody's slides, will be available in the content repository in a few weeks, but in case anybody is interested in accessing them now, they're available at bit.ly/Cirasella-TLGS 2024. And I also wanted to take a moment to comment on my theme. So when I talk about scholarly communication, I often find myself using words like landscape and terrain and map and avenue and fork and intersection. So for this presentation, I decided to go all in on that metaphor. And honestly, my secret hope is that I'm going to get so sick of that metaphor that afterwards I'll come up with a whole new set of terms to use when describing scholarly communication, and that landscape, map, etc. So needless to say, I'm curious if any of you have metaphors or analogies or sort of language that you tend to use when you talk about scholarly communication. And if so, please let us know in the chat. So, to orient you to today's tale, I work for the City University of New York, often called CUNY, which is the largest urban public university in the United States. CUNY consists of 25 campuses across the 5 boroughs of New York City, 11 senior colleges, 7 community colleges, 1 honors college, and 6 graduate and professional schools. And something that's often misunderstood about CUNY is that it's a single university made up of multiple colleges and schools. It is not a university system consisting of multiple universities in the way that the State University of New York system is, the University of California system is, the University of Texas system is, etc. So more specifically, I work at the CUNY Graduate Center, or GC, and because of CUNY's unusual structure, the Graduate Center is also quite unique. It's a standalone graduate-only school. It is not a graduate school within a larger campus or a graduate-only satellite of another campus. It is its own school on its own campus. It has 17 master's programs and 32 doctoral programs. And in order to understand the GC and how it's similar to or different from your institutions, it helps to understand that our campus, as it were, is just one very large building. And that large building is in the heart of Manhattan. And for those of you who are familiar with Manhattan, it's at the intersection of 5th Avenue and 34th Street. And for those of you who aren't all that familiar with Manhattan, it is directly diagonally across the street from the Empire State Building and a block away from Herald Square. And in fact, the GC's building was originally the flagship store of the B. Altman department store chain. And so those of you who've watched The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel have caught glimpses of the GC because in the show, Midge works at B. Altman and the exterior shots were filmed just outside the library. Okay, so now that you have your bearings, let's begin in earnest. My story about teaching a credit-bearing course is divided into 3 parts: getting to the course, getting through the course, and then where to next. So getting to the course. So just to give you a little bit of a timeline, before 2020, there had been a fair amount of daydreaming and informal discussions among library faculty about the possibility of someday in the unknown future offering a credit-bearing course. And we were encouraged in this idea by the enthusiastic feedback we reliably got from students who participated in our Open Knowledge Fellowship program, which is a 6-session program in which we help doctoral students understand how to find and teach with open educational resources. And then this might seem like a non sequitur, but it's not. In 2020, 2021, the library structure flattened, and we created our first ever governance plan, including a formal committee structure, which helped formalize and democratize decision-making. So then in 2021-22, the brand new Curriculum, Instruction, and Reference Committee immediately began exploring the possibility of offering a library course. And we quickly learned that the easiest and fastest path was partnering with the Master's Program in Liberal Studies, or MALS. And so the following year, 2022-23, we brought a course proposal, and it was approved by both the library and MALS. And so a plan was made and prep began. And then in summer 2023, the course was taught by me. Okay, so between our initial brainstorming and the ultimate outcome, a lot of changes were made. And so I just wanted to review a few of them. So at first, partially because it's what we heard happened at a lot of other schools, we were imagining a one-credit course, both because of what we thought would be interesting to students, appealing to students, and what would be appropriate for the content and the types of assignments we imagined that we would assign. But we soon learned that the Graduate Center is actually moving away from one-credit classes because very few students sign up for them, because most degree programs require credits, a total number of credits that's a multiple of 3. So most students are interested in the 3-credit courses. Also, the scope really changed. So at first we were imagining what's quite common in credit-bearing library courses, sort of an assortment of research-related topics, things like advanced database searching, data management, archival research, and so on. And then we got the feedback that the MALS program would prefer for it to cohere around a theme better. And so as we examined the ideas we initially had and looked for commonalities and ways to cluster them, we realized that really what we had the best shot of turning into a coherent course was a scholarly communications course. And that would be both the practical information of ScholComm and then also the more theoretical issues and debates in ScholComm. So as for course title, because we were initially imagining it as a library research course, we had titles like research and scholarship in mind. But as the scope of the course changed, we landed on the title Intricacies and Ethics of Scholarly Information, which we thought might act as a little bit more of a draw to students as well. And our initial idea was that we would teach it as a team, that it would be taught by a number of library faculty, each one being responsible for just a few course sessions. But then it turns out there needed to be a single instructor on record for the course. And once we learned that, the conversation just sort of shifted. It could have still been team taught with one instructor of record, but the conversation shifted, and it was ultimately decided that it would be taught by one person, and that one person would be me. So, burying the treasure. As I said, it was quite clear this was a scholarly communication course, but scholarly communication is arguably jargon, and specifically jargon for the library and publishing community. So I wanted to avoid the jargon. How could we describe a course about scholarly communication without ever using the phrase scholarly communication? So this is what I landed on. This course is an opportunity to step back and consider the scholarly information landscape that you inhabit as a graduate student and researcher. We will explore traditional and emerging forms of scholarship, how works enter the scholarly record, and how they're discovered, accessed, and evaluated. Throughout, we will also ask whose perspectives are excluded, whose contributions are undervalued, and how the systems at play reproduce biases and compound inequities. We will also turn the lens on ourselves, examining both the ethical implications of our participation in this ecosystem and the ways in which we can contribute to a more equitable future. So, as I'm sure all of you know, it's really hard to start with a blank page. And so as we were working on this, we asked a few folks for some help. So the committee that had worked on this course proposal, we had read and appreciated an article about a library research course for graduate students by Sylvia Tagg. I reached out to her, and she graciously corresponded with me. Similarly, we had read and appreciated an article by Catherine O'Clair. I also reached out to her and communicated with her a bit. And then I was lucky enough to have Maria Bond from the University of Illinois share her syllabus for a scholarly communication course for library and information science graduate students. And then AJ Murray from Murray State University, AJ Boston from Murray State University shared his syllabus for an undergraduate scholarly communication course with me. And so all of that was really helpful for getting oriented and getting started. As I considered how to approach this course, I also had to grapple with my own personal limitations. So at the GC, summer courses are taught as overload, meaning that I would teach the course as a paid adjunct on top of my regular job. But given my family obligations and my own personal health and energy limitations, could I work full-time and teach a course? And to me, the answer was very clear. No, I couldn't. So how could I manage it? I decided that I would liberally take annual leave in order to carve out time and reserve energy for the course. So in May, I took a few days of annual leave to finalize the syllabus. And over the summer, I took a full day of annual leave for every day that the course met. And luckily, we get a lot of annual leave, so I was able to do that. There was also a surprise along the way. When summer registration opened, the course wasn't listed, as I expected it to be, as a special topics in liberal studies course, but rather as a special topics in public scholarship course. And it became the first course taught in the brand new public scholarship MALS concentration. So that was a surprise, but it was actually a good fit in terms of the content. Now, did this categorization under public scholarship instead of under liberal studies more generally help or hurt enrollment? It's a little hard to say. So spring 2023, and especially May 2023, there was a real sprint before the course began. So I had to think about what kind of instructor I wanted to be. So I attended workshops on ungrading, low stakes assignments, and other pedagogical topics. And of course, I had to finalize the course content, the topics, the order we'd cover them in, the readings, the assignments, decide on the terms of engagement, like the grading policy, and so on. And then, of course, there are always additional sections of a syllabus, sections on academic integrity, accommodations, etc. And much to my surprise, those sections aren't standardized at the Graduate Center. So I sought guidance from our Teaching and Learning Center, which very helpfully provided me with some models that I could work from. And then I also wanted to make sure that I kept my own commitments. And so one of my commitments for this course was that I was going to build a public-facing course website with a Creative Commons license so others could benefit from it and reuse it if they wish. And I also wanted to make sure the course would have zero-cost readings only, so everything would be publicly accessible or available via the library. And then I had to make some compromises along the way. So before starting, I realized that I could responsibly finalize the readings for the first 4 course sessions. And then I would finalize and release the other readings on a rolling basis, both as I got a sense of the students, their interests, and the shape the course was taking, but also just to kind of avoid a decision fatigue. It was just too hard to make all of those decisions at once. And I also had to accept that I wouldn't manage to fully or closely read everything before assigning it. As a scholarly communication librarian, no surprise, I've read a lot of articles about scholarly communication, but then there are also a lot that I knew about or I'd maybe read the abstract of or skimmed but hadn't fully read myself. And then there were some others that I needed to go looking for to match a certain topic. And so, yes, there were some things that I was reading for the first time along with the students. Okay, so that's how we got to the beginning point of the course and now getting through the course. So it was an 8-week marathon. A 3-credit course has to meet for 30 hours, but because it was a summer course, there's a lot of flexibility, and how to divvy up those 30 hours was left largely up to me. I decided on 14 sessions over 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks rather than 7 weeks because there were 2 holidays along the way, which was nice because they offered breathers. And we met Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to 8:10 p.m. We decided, or I decided, that it would be hybrid. We would meet Mondays on Zoom in case I or the students were away for a long weekend over the summer. And then we met in person on Wednesdays. And then the expectations beyond attendance for this 8-week marathon. There was a fairly heavy reading load. And then I also expected students to reply to discussion prompts that I posted in a private online forum in order to preserve student privacy. I, of course, could not put that on the public website. That had to be in a private forum because FERPA prevents the disclosure of information about students. And then there was also an in-class presentation and a final project where I gave the students a choice. They could write a kind of traditional paper or create a conference-style poster as another exercise in a different form of scholarly communication. So my fellow runners on this marathon, ultimately there were 6 students, 5 in master's programs at the Graduate Center, and 1 in a bachelor's to master's pipeline from another CUNY school. I didn't get any PhD students in the course. 1 enrolled and then unenrolled before the class even began. And in some ways, that's no surprise because the Graduate Center offers very few summer courses, and they are all master's courses. There are no doctoral courses over the summer, so it's not really a surprise that we wouldn't get doctoral students in that summer course. But the 6 students that I did get, they were curious and engaged beyond my wildest dreams, and they all brought knowledge, experiences, insights, and questions that greatly enriched the course. And I am not just saying that. There were backgrounds in financial research and regulation, in news and book editing, in writing tutoring, and all of that really enriched the conversations. So in a very real way, I am not just saying this, we learned together. So just giving you a sense of the marathon map, there were 14 sessions, and this is how I divided up the topics. The first 2 sessions were overviews of scholarship, scholarly publishing, and scholarly communication more generally, then peer review and its variants, the role of citations, research metrics, what do they actually measure, open access and how to achieve it, who owns scholarship, decolonizing scholarly communication, publications and bad actors, artificial intelligence and scholarly communication, inclusion and accessibility in scholarly communication. And then there was a student's choice day where they ultimately decided on 3 topics they'd like to discuss together. And it was the replication crisis, surveillance publishing, and book publishing. And then we ended with a discussion of cataloging, classification, and the discovery of scholarship, for which we had a guest speaker. And then a discussion of where do we go from here, for which we also had a guest speaker. So finish line feedback. I sent a survey to the students at the end of the class, and for the sake of privacy, I can't share most of it, but in broad strokes, students really enjoyed the course. They said they learned a lot and they loved most of the readings. In fact, one of the students discouraged me from doing the thing I had done where I sometimes said that students could skim certain readings or skip certain sections. And the student who said this said, don't give us permission to skim. Like, we want to do the reading. This is why we're here. They were definitely most engaged by the ethical and political issues we covered, as opposed to, for example, my mini presentation on persistent identifiers, which needless to say was rather dry. But at the same time, they desired more concrete step-by-step information about the journal publishing process. They thought it would be useful for all graduate students to take the course, and one suggested making a jazzier name for the course. Now, Intricacies and Ethics of Scholarly Information was a whole lot jazzier than Research and Scholarship, but the student who said this said that she really thought that that course name, Intricacies and Ethics of Scholarly Information, didn't fully capture the content and sort of excitement of the course. And I'm not going to read this list, but I also asked the students to let me know which readings they appreciated and valued the most. And so if anyone is interested in iterating on this course plan, this is the list of articles that the students really appreciated. And then I also asked them to put on my radar anything they read along the way for their assignments that they would recommend that I consider to include on future iterations of the syllabus. And so this was that list. Okay, so where to next? Let me just check my time. Okay, so intentions for next time. Needless to say, there will be some wiggling in the future. I would really like to teach this in a fall or spring semester rather than the summer in the future. The summer session is just too compressed and too intense. And as I explained, it will never attract many students because there's just not a culture of summer courses at the Graduate Center, and there really aren't any summer courses for doctoral students at the Graduate Center. I'd also like to lay a better foundation. Ultimately, I wasn't really happy with the first 2 sessions. I'd like to put more work into creating a better, more organized overview of ScholComm basics before we jump into the other topics. And also, I'd like to assign more alternative readings. The students responded really well to the podcasts and videos that I assigned. So I'd like to strategically swap out some of the textual readings for some other podcasts, videos, or other types of media. If possible, I'd like to have more guest speakers. We had 2. the students really enjoyed their visits, so I'd like to aim for 3 or 4 over the course of a semester. And I'd also like to put more class time in the students' hands. One of the best days was the day that they presented their presentations. The presentations were great, and we really all learned a lot from each other. They taught each other and me so much on that day. And then, needless to say, I put so much work into preparing the course, and it was so hard the first time that I'd like to reap the benefits of having already taught it, because it will be easier the second, third time. Okay, so when is the next time? Unfortunately, we don't know. We have a particularly tight budget at the Graduate Center right now, which means that fewer courses are being offered across the departments. And so MALS in particular is offering far fewer electives. So it's not a great time for MALS to offer the course again, but it's also not a great time for the library to ask to start offering its own courses when we've never done that before. That said, there will soon be a public scholarship PhD certificate. So the arrival of that program might introduce some wiggle room in the course offerings, and it might also make more students interested in taking this course. But before we make a plan, we have some really gnarly workload questions to figure out. I taught it as overload, but if we're going to teach courses on an ongoing basis, this course or other library courses we could offer, for example, a course on archival research, we really think they would be interested. But if we're teaching courses, should it be part of the library faculty member's job or taught on overload? Because we really can't squeeze a course into an already full job, and additional hiring is unlikely. But at the same time, working a full-time job and teaching on overload isn't easy either. So we really have to give some thought to those questions. And then what's mine is yours. So as I said, there's a course website, which includes the syllabus, the session details, the links to the readings. That's at scholarlyinfo.commons.gc.cuny.edu. And once I stop sharing my slides, I'll put some of these links into the chat. And then I also made copies of all of the assignments. So the assignments were initially locked up inside that private course forum, but I wanted to be able to share this information with you as well. So I created documents and I linked to them with all the discussion prompts I had in the forum, the instructions for the in-class presentation, and the instructions for the final project. And all of this is licensed with a Creative Commons license. So I really do welcome you to look at it, take from it what would be useful to you, and iterate on it if you'd like. And so that is everything. I'm going to stop sharing my slides now so I can share some of these links.
Jill, would you like to get your own questions from the chat, or do you want me to get them for you?
Because it was so hard for me I wasn't able to see the chat while I was sharing my slides. I really didn't see anything as it was coming in, so it would be helpful if you could share them with me.
We have a request from Doreen that you share the slide with topics 1 through 9 again. That is okay. You have stopped the share. That is okay. So Jill has just put them in the chat. Rebecca thanks you for providing your slides and the list of readings that the students really liked. She's going to add some of those to her list. I was wondering, did students mostly choose the paper or the poster when you gave them the option?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I was surprised. I was expecting them to go for the poster because, as I told them, the poster would be less work. But there is also the chance that it would be more vulnerable, because I told them that I wanted to put the posters on display. So if they could choose less work, but sharing that work with more people than me, or they could choose more work, but it would be shared just privately with me. And so most students chose the paper, to my surprise.
Interesting. Okay, and I also want to remind everyone, you can unmute yourselves and just ask your question if you would like. Roman says that ScholComm topics are consistently things he has to gloss over for time reasons in the one-shots, and it's a gift to be able to focus on these in detail during a summer session.
You know, and it goes both ways, because I completely agree. When I'm doing instruction for a course, I have to sort of rush past a lot of the ScholComm topics so that I can talk about issues of, discovery and formation of searches and things like that. But in the course, I found that the students also wanted me to spend some time talking about library databases, constructing searches, etc. So I think in the next iteration, that is something I would deliberately carve out some time to do at the beginning of the course.
Okay. I also saw in your slides that you talked about ungrading and low status assignments. Was that more for you or them or both? Who
So
benefited from that?
yes, so I knew that I I wasn't interested in being a harsh grader, because what I really wanted was engagement. And I knew that it was quite possible that I'd get more engagement if I took some pressure off by not making it a very, competitive or grades-oriented course. So I can't say I went all the way down the path of ungrading, but I did make it very clear to the students that I'd be grading mostly on engagement, and true engagement with the topics at hand. And what I told myself is if they do everything that's asked of them and really participate and show engagement, they would get an A. And everybody did. And then with creating low stakes assignments, that was an interesting session about creating assignments that wouldn't be intimidating to students or deter participation, but rather things that would generate participation. And so, as you'll see in the discussion prompts, those prompts are very conversational, and I'm asking them to sort of do certain things and share what they learned, rather than asking them to, formal analyses or do things where there would be a right or wrong answer that they might get right or wrong.
Okay. Elizabeth says that ScholComm is still a term she can't easily communicate with users in the various disciplines she serves. Did students come up with a better way to describe it?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I have an answer to that question, but it was definitely the case that over the course of the term that the students were sort of realizing like, oh, and it's also this. And the ripple effects are also felt in this realm. Like, I think they maybe weren't expecting me to go into topics related to research or evaluation, but then they saw how, the formal scholarly communication can lead to the measurement of the formal scholarly communication, can lead to trying to evaluate people according to the metrics that they get in the formal scholarly communication, and then how there's research showing how that kind of evaluation is quite inequitable. And so it did seem to be that they were always like, oh, like it leads here too. And like, I think they went in thinking that would be more specifically about publishing, and then realizing that the scope is actually much broader than that, like the ripple effects through academia.
Martha wants to know, did any questions from students surprise you? And which ScholComm areas did they express surprise about?
I'm trying to remember. So one thing I will say that definitely surprised me, it wasn't a question, but it was one of the students' personal histories. So his history in financial research brought so much to the class because there were these parallels between non-academic financial research, which often has to do with disclosure and regulatory processes, and he couldn't believe the extent to which scholarly research was so completely unregulated, such that there could be, lots of misrepresentation, fraud, etc. And so he brought all sorts of interesting information about the kinds of disclosures that happen in the financial, not that there's not misrepresentation there as well, but the disclosures that go along with the presentation of information. And so he was really interested in how there wasn't that culture of sort of backing up what you say in certain ways, and he made really fascinating contributions based on his experience in a different publishing.
Okay, I think we are out of time on this session. Thank you, Jill. I know you did this with another big project pending at the same time. I know you were double tasking. For anyone who's not aware, Jill and I put out the Journal of Graduate Librarianship while she was doing this class. It was a big scramble for us. If you have not gone and looked at the journal, we hope that you will. It is for this group. Thank you.
Can I add one more thing, Wendy?
Yes.
So I just saw another question came in from Rebecca about did any students express an interest in doing research in these topics? And so One of the things that I considered a big success was after this course, 2 students considered switching their concentrations to public scholarship. And I know that one of them has in fact done that, and is now my research assistant and helps both with the Journal of Graduate Librarianship and is also working on a paper on a scholarly communication topic with me. So that was very, very gratifying.
I forgot that's where he came from. Thank you for presenting this session for the TLGS 2024 conference. We appreciate you sharing your research with us.